Who would have thought we would see Stephen Curry become a top MVP candidate this season? It certainly wasn't me, and I highly doubt it was you as well. But with Steph Curry dominating and leading his under-talented team to a top seed in the Western Conference, it reminded me of the infamous season he had back in the 2015-16 season, where he became the first ever unanimous MVP in league history. So I thought to myself, now would be the perfect time to make a Historic Runs episode highlighting Stephen Curry's amazing 2016 regular season run. If you're new around here, welcome. The Historic Runs series is pretty self-explanatory. It's where I analyze a specific run that a player has, whether it be in the playoffs or in the regular season. So far, I've done LeBron's 2018 playoff run, so if that interests you, I'll leave the link to it in the description and in the top right corner right now. As for this video, if you enjoy it, it would really mean a lot if you leave a like, because it really goes a long way to help out our small channel. Subscribe to get notified whenever I post, which is daily, and leave a comment letting me know what you think of the video, and if you have any other video ideas you'd like to see me create. I respond to everybody, so don't hesitate to leave a comment down below. Now let's get started. Now just a heads up, this video is going to be very statistically heavy and detailed. So if that sounds like a lot to you and you're just looking for some fun and relaxing basketball videos, might I recommend these videos instead. Stephen Curry, the greatest point guard of the century, set the Bay Area into a Warriors frenzy with his electric three-point scoring and the team's dynastical tendencies, with records being broken left and right. Curry's season may have been highlighted by the 402 three-pointers that he made and the unanimous MVP, but very few people knew how good he actually was that year, even those living in the eye of the storm. He entered rarefied air in his 2016 season, and no player since then has been able to match it. But exactly how good was he when he was drilling half-court shots seemingly at will? With Steph Curry's evaluation on the line in this Historic Runs episode, let's get started. Curry's scoring alone took Golden State's offense to dynastical levels. During possessions in which he attempted to score, defined as either a true shooting attempt or a scoring turnover, the Warriors posted an offensive rating of 127. That is a whopping plus 21 relative offense, and there's potent evidence behind a figure of such a magnitude. Due to Curry's historical outside shooting, his inside scoring received far less recognition despite it being one of his best skill sets. Among players who played more than 1,000 minutes, Curry was 13th in field goal percentage on drives, which, considering his 6'3" stature, is geometrically more masterly. A part of Curry's surprising prowess in the paint was his strength. According to CBS Sports, he could deadlift 400 pounds in the summer of 2016, a mark no Warrior could top except 6'11", 255-pound Festus Ezeli. Paired with a solid motor, Curry was able to penetrate defenses with relative ease. He was a very prolific paint scorer, having taken 22.5% of his shot attempts within 3 feet of the basket. With respect to Curry's three-point barrages and smaller stature, his frequency was unexpectedly high. He was also able to capitalize on these high-efficient looks at a 69.6% clip, strikingly greater than the league average 62.4%. Curry would often opt for these shot attempts to avoid double teams out on the perimeter, swinging around the arc and finding an angle to drive. His size and vertical leap alone weren't enough to dominate defenses in the post, so during his forward-facing drives, Curry would either go take an early step to gain ground against the opponent or use his premier center of gravity. Learning to take the toll of movement with his hips instead of his ankles truly unlocked Curry's greatest interior capabilities. The other component of his elite finishing was Curry's ability to split the defenses. As the greatest shooter ever, he has also become the most gravitational player ever. He'd rarely not see multiple defenders in his peripherals when operating the perimeter. If 2 defenders went on either side of Curry, he'd split their position with surprising quickness and agile lateral movement. An aforementioned utilization of his hips allowed him to change directions with fast pivots, which often left defenders in the dust. Curry was one of the league's best paint finishers, and that was somehow always seen as a weak point in his resume, which is flat out wrong. Everywhere outside of the paint was Curry's domain. Not that the paint wasn't already in some form either. He stuffed the stat sheet with a collection of absurd shooting scores that paint an extremely flattering picture of Curry's outside scoring, a strong point of which how he and his teammates set up his scoring. Curry was one of the most efficient catch-and-shoot scorers in the league that year at a 68.6 effective field goal percentage, only behind JJ Redick for players who took more than 400 catch-and-shoot field goal attempts. However, contrary to the traditional tendencies, Curry's efficiency didn't rapidly decline on non-assisted attempts. He was the league leader in effective field goal percentage on pull-up shooting at 61.9% for players with more than 19 shot attempts. For reference, Curry took 687 of these attempts. The next most efficient player to take even 100 is DJ Augustine at 54.3%. Steph Curry wasn't an opportunist, as many primarily catch-and-shoot scorers are. He was a master schemer, consistently creating his own shot while also being an elite-level catch-and-shoot scorer. 37% of Curry's 2-point field goals were teammate assists, significantly lower than league average of 51%. From 3-point range, his figure is 55%, a large decrease from league average of 84%. It's probable Curry's scoring would have been more scrutinized if he were a product of a system in which he was set up for high-quality attempts by teammates more than himself, although this wasn't the case. Curry's status as an offensive engine wasn't exactly in question, but the rates at which he creates his own field goals further the idea that he was a peak offensive player during his second MVP season. No player has yet to match the historical contributions of Stephen Curry's outside scoring. He attempted a mind-boggling 886 3-point shots during his 79 games played, nearly 230 more shots than the second-place finisher in this stat, that being James Harden. Curry was surprisingly second in efficiency at 45.4%, trailing only behind Clippers' JJ Redick. However, Curry attempted more than double of Redick's shots on a far greater self-reliance, which suggests from an all things considered outlook, Curry was the most efficient shooter in the league. Using the league average 3-point percentage as a relative comparison, Curry added 265.8 net points to the scoreboard through his 3-point attempts alone. The efficiency and volume at which he made his 3-point shots makes Stephen Curry's 2016 season significant in league history as the greatest outside scoring season ever. I want to show you guys this one graph. The big yellow star all alone in the top right corner denotes Curry and shows off his insane shooting percentages in the 2016 season. The baby-faced assassin had not only the greatest scoring season of the year, leading the league in both scoring rate and true shooting percentage, as well as being the only player to ever win a scoring title and efficiency titles, but in the history of basketball. Given the circumstances of his scoring and how his greater self-dependence is an indicator that his scoring statistics are more reflective of his true abilities than the average opportunist, it's fair to say that Stephen Curry has the strongest scoring peak of any player in league history. As the 35th highest peak in relative true scoring percentage, estimates as a scoring attempt, and the 11th highest peak in scoring rate with historical frequency, Curry's mix of volume and efficiency were unprecedented. The next trip up Curry's sleeve, and a large contributor to his assisted shots, was his world-class movement without the ball in his hands, a generally overlooked skill when it comes to an elite offensive player. Curry's not often recognized for it compared to his eye-popping distance shooting. Fortunately, he was able to put it to good use as a member of the Warriors, a team with some of the most dynamic ball movement ever, comparable to the '96 Chicago Bulls. Curry was a threat all over the court without the ball, keeping defenders on their toes with his presence alone. With the point guard duties he had, Curry would often start his off-ball stints at the top of the perimeter. He would primarily target either the corners or the paint, two of the most efficient ranges. To do so, Curry would often slow rotations to the corner and let his teammates go to town. These made up a lot of Curry's excluded possessions, but his positioning in these spots was another outlet for shot creation. He'd sometimes feign a backdoor cut to clog a lane in which a teammate could drive, a phenomenon that would occur either starting at the corner or up top. Significant credit for this is due to his creation instead of his off-ball capabilities, but the grace and effectiveness with which Curry could feign cuts was extraordinary. Aside from his creation abilities off the ball, Curry's movement itself rivals all-time greats in the skill. He has a reputation for the game that doesn't require the athleticism to do so, but the quickness in his routes is a product of a strong physical foundation. The excess training of his hips provided an easier way for Curry to reposition himself on drives, otherwise known as changing direction. That's how he gave us a seasonal montage of possessions in which he was driving to the hoop and swiftly stepping back, showing his uncanny tendency to lose his defenders. Curry was by no means screen reliant, but his ability to weave in and out of teammate screens and opponent setups was a boost he needed to improve his self-creation off the ball. Even if Curry was a pedestrian scorer, his passing and creation would have kept him afloat as an offensive engine. The quality of his passing wasn't a focal point of his playmaking, and the skill is accurately represented by his passer rating by back picks. Since his breakout 2013 season, the metric has graded him to a mid to high 7s on a 1 to 10 scale. A lot of his assists were products of his elite vision, which made him especially aware of the corners. With 5 teammates who shot higher than 40% on corner threes, a lot of these passes were tailored to Golden State's roster. Curry was additionally proficient at splitting defenders with his quick bounce passes, a common trait among elite playmakers. He refined the tactic with his strong hips and vision approaching the hoop en route to his 1,261 points created through assists. There wasn't an excess number of negatives with Curry's passing. The notable ones include his tendency to overpass against taller defenders. During games against elite defenses, especially the recurring January 15th matchup against the Spurs, he'd find himself picking the ball up early, forcing a pass into the post or out in the perimeter. Defenders like LaMarcus Aldridge and Kawhi Leonard rushed Curry into these passes, and his intentions were clear, which those were to avoid long arms of his defenders and skip passes to an open teammate. However, Curry would often underestimate the launch angle of these passes, and they gained too much ground before the final descent. The same would occur with some of Curry's full court passes. The main theme with Curry's passing deficiencies was that he overestimated the necessary distances for tougher passes, but the lower frequency at which this happened made it a minor issue. The Warriors were a movement-heavy team, having led the league in assists per 100 possessions by a significant margin, plus 2.6 to be exact. They also led in secondary assists and assist points created. The nucleus of this action was made up by the team's big three in Curry, Draymond Green, and Klay Thompson. Curry's strongest link was Klay Thompson, to whom he assisted 209 field goals. He also assisted 139 of Green's shots and 66 of Andrew Bogut's. It's clear a lot of Curry's playmaking was focused on or around the perimeter. He averaged 2.5 fewer assists per 100 possessions with his star on the arc, Klay Thompson, off the floor. Curry's playmaking was understated that year because of how many more shots he is taking, 3.5 attempts per 100 from the previous season. But even then, his playmaking value was near the top of the league. Golden State's passing and Curry's efficient teammates counteract some of that deflation, but the confounding variables also seem to cancel themselves out. Curry is often criticized for his man-to-man abilities, and there is some truth in that. He wasn't the greatest at positioning himself, keeping a naturally flat-footed and unathletic stance. Curry had solid hands in these spots, covering higher and lower passing angles with either arm, although his 6'4" wingspan made it slightly harder to effectively clog passing lanes. Among his more potent errors includes mispositioning. He'll sometimes miss a matchup early, the only other main instance of this being a trade-off of his good rebounding. Curry would often lose his man positioning himself for a defensive rebound. This does make it a bit of a gamble, but the generally high defensive rebound percentages among teams, with the league average being 76.2%, this made it so that only a small percentage of possessions would see this fall back. With all of that said, Curry was a surprisingly good rebounder for his height, having grabbed 4.9 rebounds per 75 possessions at a 2.9% clip, suggesting that it was his best defensive rebounding season of his career. Curry's small frame made it hard for him to stay in front of strong matchups, so he'd sometimes be left in the dust on defensive possessions. Ironically, Curry was given a taste of his own medicine in these stints. He was similarly susceptible to screen actions, fizzling his entire value against stronger defenders by entirely losing his man. The strongest positive of his man-to-man game would have to be his ability to maintain space in front of his matchup. Curry could string together good defensive possessions when his matchups are moving laterally, keeping close but safe gaps between them and himself. He also had half-decent hands, which allowed him to break up plays in and near the radius of his wingspan. His transition coverage and fallback play provided a lot of unseen value for the Warriors, keeping matchups at bay and preventing an underestimated number of field goal opportunities. Impact metrics painted a consistent picture of Curry in which he was a positive defensive player. He was generally favored by more play-by-play infused and non-box metrics, with defensive scores higher than most, such as in PI RAPM, that being plus 1.7, PIPM being plus 1.47, and Raptor being plus 2.78. Although box-oriented metrics showed him some love too, with the plus 1.6 and defensive component of Basketball Reference's box plus minus model, the lowest of Curry's defensive impact metrics was his single-year luck-adjusted RAPM being negative 0.07, which painted him as a minor negative. The aggregate of Curry's scores suggested his defense as a clear positive to his teammates on the defensive end, and without any confounding variables to drastically alter the results. It's fair to say impact metrics give a strong portrait of him on the defensive end. And with Curry's evaluations under wraps, there's now a fairer picture as to where his offensive stands to the historical leaderboards. His world-class combination of scoring volume, efficiency, playmaking, and off-ball movement paired with his peak scalability makes it hard to say for his claim for sports peak offensive season is rivaled by anyone not named Michael Jordan. Given the hindrance of Jordan's impact from a more questionable portability, I deem Curry's second MVP campaign as the greatest offensive season in league history. Woo! And that does it. If you're still here, thank you so much. I know this was a lot of talking, but I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to show the support, it would mean a lot if you left a like. Let's try to aim for 50 likes on this video, which I know sounds insane, but I think you guys can do it. Subscribe to get notified whenever I post, which is daily, so you definitely don't want to miss out on high quality videos just like this one. Leave a comment letting me know what you think of the video and if Curry's 2016 season was the greatest in league history. I respond to everyone in the comments, so leave any concerns or ideas you have for future videos down below. And as always, until next time, cheers.